boundaries of music, literature, and visual arts and film. Her album with Queer Song Orchestra, Part-Time Woman, was included in CBC's list of Best Canadian Albums in 2017. Her best-selling new book, I'm Afraid of Men, was heralded as Vanity's Fair as a cultural rocket fuel. That sounds like a compliment and a half, if you ask me. She is one half of the music duo Two Attached and founder of the publishing imprint Versus Book. A Polaris Music Prize nominee and four-time Olympia Literary Award finalist. She has received honors from the Writers' Trust of Canada and CBC Reads. She has currently the director on the board of Tegan and Sara Foundation and is an assistant professor of creative writing at the University of Calgary. So that's not something that we're going to hold up against her. Please give a warm Edmonton welcome to Vivek Shraya.
Hi. Oh, really loud. Hi. How's it going? I'm really thrilled and honored to be moderating this conversation with two of my dear friends and heroes. Before we begin, I would like to share a quick story with you. In 2005, I was 3 years into my music career, and I was already beaten down by the music industry because that's how it works. And during this time, I received a magical invitation from Tegan and Sara to open for them on their US tour. And you know, at this time, I had just moved from Edmonton to Toronto, and I was totally a novice, didn't really know what I was doing at all. And then I got this chance from Tegan and Sara, and it felt like a gift. It felt like a golden ticket. I'll never forget this show, my first show on this tour, opening for Tegan and Sara. Tegan actually sat on the floor, side stage, for my entire set for 30 minutes. If you can imagine a rock star doing that, and just to make sure that my set went okay, just to make sure that I didn't have any technical difficulties. And you know, this was a really big show for me, my first show in the US. I was terrified. There was Tegan on the floor. And I was also really nervous because I planned to cover one of their songs every night as a gesture of thanks. And so Tegan being in my peripheral vision, I was like, oh shit, better not fuck this up. After I got off stage, she was still there. She checked in with me. She was like, is everything okay? Did you get everything you need? And keep in mind, she was gonna go on stage like an hour later. So the fact that she took the time to check in with me was so incredible. And then I asked her, I was like, hey, what did you think of the cover? And she was like, you know, it was a bit slow. Could have been sped up, actually. And I feel like this anecdote perfectly exemplifies the many facets of Tegan and Sara's generosity, the sharing of their platform with an audience, with an emerging artist, the care involved with sharing this platform as opposed to just leaving me on my own to do my own thing, which they could have totally done, and always being honest with feedback as opposed to blowing smoke up my ass. These are qualities that have deeply impacted the artist I am and want to be. I wouldn't be the artist I am without having Tegan and Sara as role models. And on that note, let me read their formal bio. Twin sisters born in Canada, Tegan and Sara have sold more than 1 million albums and have received 7 gold certifications, 1 double platinum certification, 3 Juno Awards, 2 Polaris Prize nominations, and a Grammy nomination. No big deal. They have performed on some of the world's biggest stages, from the 2015 Oscar telecast to major festivals such as Coachella, Lollapalooza, and Glastonbury. Tegan and Sara have openly identified as queer since the beginning of their career in 1998 and have been outspoken feminists for LGBTQ equality and gender justice. The essential message that underpins their worldview and identity is inclusion. They're board members of the Girls Rock Camp Foundation and have supported several LGBTQ organizations over the past 2 decades. The Tegan and Sara Foundation is an extension of their work, identity, and long-standing commitment to supporting and building progressive change. Tegan and Sara, everyone.
Oh, hi! That seemed way further than it looks, but we have tiny little legs. I met 2 people today who told me how short I am, so if you were wondering. Uh-oh.
I'm really trying not to create a wardrobe malfunction.
Sarah, hold up your trench coat so Vivek doesn't expose herself.
How's it going?
Really good. So excited to be here. Hi, Edmonton.
Hi.
Hi. That was a nice intro, thank you. That was nice.
Thanks. Well,
Did
thanks
I really tell you it was too slow?
You did.
Sounds like you.
But I love
I
that.
sounded awesome until then, and then I was like, ooh, harsh.
No, but that's so great. I love that about you. You've both always been so honest with me.
Was that the So Jealous cover?
No, it was Don't Confess.
It probably was too slow, because that song is just, it feels, at every tempo, it feels like you're singing it in slow motion.
Well, it's a great song.
Don't think I'll confess. Like even fast. Don't think I'll confess. You're still like, shh, hurry up. Okay,
So
sorry.
really it was your inner voice critiquing yourself.
I am always critiquing myself.
Right. Well, here we are, Albertans in Alberta, and I want to go back in time. My memory of hearing you for the first time, or one of the first times, was like the late 90s, early 2000s, and my queer friends, my lesbian friends, were like, we need to go to the Tegan and Sara concert at the Sidetrack Cafe, which used to be right over there. How many of you used to go to those concerts, by the way? Yes. They don't, Sidetrack doesn't even exist anymore.
What is it, condos? Best Buy?
Probably, yeah, pretty much.
McDonald's?
But the thing about those concerts, it wasn't just to see you were amazing, but it was also that you were creating these queer spaces in cities like Edmonton, but simultaneously you were also coming into your own queerness. And I was thinking a lot about, I think it was your post on Instagram on Coming Out Day, and I'm just curious what it was like. Did you have an understanding that you were inadvertently creating queer spaces back then? And like, what did it mean for you to navigate your own queerness while also being like vital visibility in this province and beyond at such a young age?
I mean, the truth is, and I hate this answer, but I want to be really honest.
Please.
The answer in 2 parts. One, did we know? I think we knew without using any of that kind of language.
Of course.
Because we were teenagers and then young 20-somethings, and we didn't have any of that yet. And I also think that while it was sort of comforting, it was also extremely uncomfortable for us. I think I'll speak only for myself, but I was extremely homophobic at times. I felt...
Same.
Yeah, I felt...
That's why I never came.
Yeah. You're such a bitch. It's really confusing, and I mean, I even felt that to some degree about Tegan. I sometimes wish Tegan was straight, because I was just like, I don't know, I wanted one of us to be normal in some weird way.
She just told me that backstage that her and Mom think I'm in love with a man right now.
We just constantly are trying to make her straight. It's weird. No, but these are really complex things, and we don't need to get into like the deep rooted stuff. But I think, you know, at 19 or 20 years old, I was experiencing a lot of homophobia from adults and from people in the music industry, and then I was having this confusing experience of seeing an audience that looked like me. And so I was then being kind of homophobic to the audience, which is confusing because I also loved them. And I also wanted them to be there. And I felt so happy to have these people who were just like me to connect with. But deep down inside, there was this part of me that didn't understand how I could have both of those feelings at the same time. And it took probably 5 or 6 years. And really a significant person, Emmy, who some of you know, works with Tegan and I, but works with us on our band project, but I also dated for many years. And she was the one who really changed how I felt about it. Because, I mean, and I was 22 when I met her. And she was like, she was the coolest person I had ever met. She had the asymmetrical haircut. What'd you say?
Nothing.
Oh. She had the asymmetrical haircut that I got. Like, she had the great politics that I still hadn't developed. She was the first person who respected me, liked my band, but after a few dates told me I was really homophobic. And she was like, you have to learn. I remember, it sounds so cheesy, but it was a really specific moment around a pride parade, and my family, my uncle and aunt being in town who were conservative, and me making it like sort of putting down the parade, and that my family was going to see it. And she was like extremely turned off, and she was like, I like you, but your politics stink and you are homophobic, and if you can't love this community and you can't love yourself, how do you expect anyone else to? And I was just totally changed by shame. I felt ashamed of who I had been, and I really started to really embrace the fact that we were creating these spaces, and I started to realize that my discomfort and my homophobia was coming from these other people, and I just kind of cast them off.
I mean, that's the nature of homophobia too, right?
Yeah.
Is that it often is coming from the outside, and that's how it becomes internalized. And I just think it's so incredible to hear someone that is like quite clearly a queer icon and has meant so much to so many of us in terms of coming into our own queerness, to actually talk about your relationship to self-hate and homophobia, because I think we have this assumption that, you know, even in your bio, it's like been openly queer since like the
Like in the incubator with a rainbow flag. I was like,
well, that's kind of what the bio sounds
Yeah.
like, right? So to have this, I think, is really nice for us to hear, for those of us who were struggling with the same thing or continue to struggle. I know that like the three of us use the word queer now, but kind of referring back to what you were saying, like for me, the thing I talk about a lot about with Edmonton is that we didn't have language like homophobia, we didn't have language like queer, trans. I'm curious about your own evolution to talk about your gender and sexuality. Like for me, the word gay was like sort of projected onto me, or gaylord, that was what was happening here.
oh, I love that word. Let's take it back.
Yeah, so I'm curious what your relationship, Sarah, I remember when we were in India, you briefly were identifying as a trans elf. So, so I'm just very curious about, you know, we have so many...
Do you two want me to leave?
No, but both of you. I'm curious about both of you, like how you have evolved to the word queer, and like, you know, in terms of thinking about language and change.
It's actually a really good question, because I think about the words. Like Sarah and I are writing a book right now, and we can't talk a lot about it. Just hold on. We're writing a book right now, we can't talk a lot about it, but we do talk about ourselves and as young people, and as, you know, coming into our identity in a way. And I've been really thinking about how I came to understand the different words to describe myself. And gaylord is the first word I remember hearing. And
how many people remember the word gaylord, just out of curiosity?
Yeah.
How many of you were called gaylord?
Yeah.
So this is like gaylord solidarity right now. Yeah.
So here's the thing is that, I mean, when people were called gaylord, it didn't mean gay, and it didn't necessarily mean gay guy.
No.
I mean, it was just a word you threw. You know, it was like any other kind of bad, terrible slang or thing you said in the schoolyard. So people, I can remember as young as maybe grade 1 or grade 2, you know, people being like, gaylord, you know, like, and no idea what it meant. And then my dad, a lot of his coworkers, a handful of his coworkers and a family member of his used to call him fag all the time. And as kids, of course, we had no idea what that was, but you just know when someone's like they would just say to Sarah and I, like, you know your dad's a fag, right? And we were like, no idea what that means, but it did not seem great.
And we didn't have Google back then too,
No,
right? Just
so
to
it was
give
just
you context.
Yeah, like it was literally like, we were like, I just didn't even know where to put it, but you could just tell the tone, it wasn't a good thing. I knew they were making fun of him. And he had like one earring, and he had a mullet, and he never dated any women. Yeah, he was a fag, basically, but he wasn't, no. But he never dated any other women after my mom and him split up that we knew of. And so once I learned the meaning of that word, that was really interesting. But then in junior high, so grade 7, when we were 11 years old, that was the first time I remember hearing the word les, or lesbian. And that was something that mean girls would call geeky girls, you know, because that was like the worst thing that you could be.
So again, not about gender, not about sexuality.
No, but then I started to put together that there was a difference, like between using them in that way and never in that time did I ever consider the thoughts that I was having about girls, or the feeling of the crushes I had. In particular, I really liked older women, so like there was a woman that worked with my mom, and I used to daydream that she would kidnap me. Stay with me. It's a completely harmless fantasy, but I'm 7 or 8 years old, and she pulls me into a van. It's a weird coping strategy from the 80s, you know? Everyone was being kidnapped. Felt like everyone was being kidnapped. Seatbelts and kidnapping, that's how you know you're from like born in 1978 to 1988.
You reclaimed the narrative.
Yeah.
You were like, I want to be kidnapped. I own this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I want to just say right now, like, we're living in a time where I think it's important. I do want to say, like, I'm not in any way making light of kidnapping. It's terrible. I'm so sorry if any of you have been touched by that awful. That's terrible. But I know, I just ruined it. But I just had to say it. I can't.
No,
I'm
fair,
Canadian.
fair.
But my fantasy was just that she would kidnap me, and then not much happened. She would just mostly take me home, and then she did have like a room in her basement that I had to stay in. But other than that, we just talked, and obviously that spoke
Were
more.
there cookies or candy?
Well, no, it just. I think I desperately wanted someone to listen to me, probably because I like to talk. But I shared everything with Sarah. My mom was working full-time and going back to school. So I think I just wanted a mom to listen to me probably, but because of my sexuality later on in life, I do see that was probably my gateway. But anyway, the point is that I didn't have any language. And what's really wild is that we graduated high school in 1998 and I still didn't have the language. I could talk, I spoke eloquently about the fact that I thought gay people should be equal, that if you loved someone of the same sex, that was good, that you should never, ever, ever not love, and that was a positive thing. You know, I had all this language like that, and then had a secret relationship with a girl and did not see them as the same thing. And that's, you know, interesting, like, because I just didn't, you know, understand that. I guess because they were all negative words, I didn't assign one to myself. And then when I was 18, 19, or whenever it came out, I think it was 19, everyone was like, you're a lesbian.
And how did you feel about that word?
Like it sounded like you're a lesbian.
Yeah, that's how my mom says it. Lesbian.
Lesbian.
Yeah, it's like who wants to be a lesbian?
Not me.
My mom was like, even Oprah's talking about lesbians.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I don't want to be a lesbian.
But every time someone would say it to me, it just felt like they were saying woman, or lady,
Interesting.
or ma'am.
So it was misogyny, you think?
And I was like, you know, like, new lesbian, like, and so I was like getting to relive my tomboy stage. And so when they were like lesbian, it felt like they were yelling like boobs or something. I don't know. I just was like, I don't like that word. But I dated someone not like Emmy. She was mean, but she was like, you hate yourself because you won't call yourself a lesbian. Because I was like, why can't we be gay? And why do I have to say, like, I don't know. It was like a whole thing.
I do think there is a huge part. I mean, perhaps some of it is misogyny, but I think this touches on, I think, why we adopted a word like queer,
Yeah, I'm curious
and
how
why
you got
we
there.
picked less gendered words to describe our identity was because, I mean, specifically for me, I don't always feel like a girl. I mean, I don't necessarily feel like
Wouldn't you rather
boy.
be called girl than lady?
I like girl, but I think
I love lady.
I like ladies, but
Me too.
And these things are important. These are really, I mean, as much as we're joking, these words are so profound when you're trying to
Well, but while we're
figure out
making
your
these
identity.
important words, can I just say also prefer small to short? Just saying. I'm small.
Okay, you identify as small. We hear you.
Thank you. Hashtag small.
Yeah, I think that these words are important because as you're trying to figure out your identity and how you're both like and unlike everyone around you, for me, I've always grimaced. Like, I've always hated the word lesbian. I don't know where I got that from. It could be from the homophobic way it was used. It could be because it feels so gendered to me. It feels so like you're a lesbian and you like lesbians. And I always struggled with that. I also have almost exclusively dated women who identify as bisexual. And I think in some weird way, when I was dating those women, it made me feel even more isolated from them. Like they only liked me half as much as they could. And I was over here with the lesbians, you know? And like, there was that in the early days for me. I wanted to be like my girlfriend, and she didn't identify as a lesbian. She identified as bisexual. So there was all these things.
Okay,
that
so
just,
then the journey to queer.
well, queer felt like, okay, this is my word. I can.
When was the first time you heard the word queer?
I heard it.
We'd heard it a million times, but in the mid 2000s was the first time I started to hear people saying, "I'm queer" or "gay," like women. And a lot of it was about them identifying to the community. So a lot of them were bisexual women who didn't want to be called bisexual, who were like, "I'm queer." And it's kind of like Gaylord. It felt like we were taking it back, and that felt really exciting. So I don't know, after this I might just identify as Gaylord. Ooh, Lord of the Gays.
Small
Lord of the Gays,
Gay
Tegan, from Tegan and Sara.
My grandparents used to use queer to describe gay people.